Baz Luhrmann, the director who thrives on maximalism, and Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll and star of Las Vegas. I mean, to be honest, it's actually quite a good pairing.
That it's lost its sense of direction, even its common decency.
You don't so much as wiggle a finger.
There's a lot of people saying a lot of things, but in the end, you gotta listen to yourself.
In that moment, Elvis the man was sacrificed, and Elvis the God was born.
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Luke's Reviews, and on today's video, get your blue suede shoes on, those hips are wiggling, and check in to the Heartbreak Hotel as Baz Luhrmann is about to give us his take on one of the most famous human beings to have ever walked the earth, Elvis. Elvis chronicles the life of, you guessed it, Elvis Presley. Narrated by his controversial manager Colonel Tom Parker, we see how Elvis rose to stardom and become an almost deity-like presence to the people of the world. The film takes us through every pivotal moment of his life and how his music shaped the very world we live in today, all the way up to his gradual breakdown and eventual death. Elvis is an epic film. Baz Luhrmann has ensured that he gives the greatest showman on earth the greatest film and most extravagant film that he possibly can. However, in typical Baz Luhrmann fashion, it can all be a little too much, and there are chunks of this film that are screaming for just a more calmer approach. I mean, there's no denying that Luhrmann has a very distinctive style. He likes to blast continuous and frenetic visuals in the faces of his audience, never really allowing the film to settle unless it absolutely needs to. And whilst this firework display is frequently dazzling, it can't help but feel almost overbearing of this 160-minute runtime. Eventually, as the film progresses and we near the end of Elvis's life, and it details the psychological and financial abuse that he suffered at the hands of Colonel Tom Parker, only then does the film really kind of pull itself in, rein itself back, settle, and it is in those 20 minutes that I thought that this worked. This was the best part of the film for me, because it really and truly focused on the emotional aspect of Elvis, not as this icon, but as a person. But prior to that final act where it focuses on the tragedy towards the end of Elvis's life, I hate to use this term, but before all that, it was style over substance. That being said, because of Luhrmann, undeniably, this is one of the most original looking biopics that I think we have ever seen. And perhaps most importantly of all, it does serve as a testament to the man, the myth, and the legend that was Elvis Presley. But I think that a lot of the time, Baz Luhrmann really got caught up with the flair and the pizzazz, and that he should have held back just a little bit, had that restraint, especially in regards to the relationship between Elvis and his mother, because I think the film breezes through that too quickly and doesn't allow the emotions to settle. I keep coming back to the word. The film never settles. It's constantly on the move. And I think for us to understand Elvis, not just the mythos that surrounds him, but the human being, this film really needed to just calm the hell down. Now, in terms of performances, it's kind of a mixed bag. Leading the way is Austin Butler as Elvis himself, and everything you've read or heard about his performance is entirely true. I know it's a cliche to say, but he does totally disappear into this role. And playing Elvis is such a tricky deal as well, because the performance could have easily fallen into the impression category, where you're not feeling like it's Elvis on screen. You feel like it is just an actor putting on a voice and dressing up to look like him. But that's not the case for Butler. He becomes Elvis. There comes a point where we see kind of like actual archive footage of Elvis, and I had to remind myself, I was just like, oh yeah, that's what Elvis looks like, and not Butler. And at times I do think that the film is trying to work against Butler's performance, because Butler embodies the icon of what made Elvis Presley so popular, but at the same time is still trying to get across who he was just as a man. His presence is shimmering, especially when on stage, of which Butler does all the majority of his own singing too. So taking all this into account, are we looking at our next potential Best Actor winner? I'm not going to go so far as to say that I think he's got the Oscar in the bag, because it's still very early days. I don't know if I've ever really seen any other performances that could contend with that. It's way too early still. However, I would be very surprised if he does not at least get a nomination. So whilst Butler catapults himself into surefire superstardom, we have Tom Hanks, everyone's favourite uncle, as Colonel Tom Parker. And I'm not quite sure what his intention was, and I'm not entirely sure that it really worked. His performance actually seemed to fit most with what Baz Luhrmann's directorial style was going for, but in doing so clashed with pretty much everyone else's performance. He's basically a cartoon. Looks like that weird monster in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and sounds like a Kentucky Herbert the Pervert, and it's just all too ridiculous. As bad as this may initially sound, I can't help but feel that Baz Luhrmann stood in his own way when directing this one, because it is in the direction where my issues lie. Don't get me wrong, Elvis Presley does not deserve a paint-by-numbers generic biopic, but I think the level of excess strays far into a degree in which the story loses its focus. That being said though, it's far from a bad movie, it's just a noisy one. Thankfully, Austin Butler emerges as a superstar with a performance any Hollywood veteran would wish to have on their resume. So, I'm going to give Elvis a 6 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on Elvis. Let me know, have you had a chance to see the film yet? What did you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And my question to you, I want to know, perhaps instead of Baz Luhrmann, who do you think could have been a good director to direct an Elvis biopic? I'm going to go with kind of a left field choice here, and I think it's a director who has had great opportunities, and I think giving her something like this would have absolutely given her a pedestal. Marielle Heller. She directed Can You Ever Forgive Me, starring Melissa McCarthy, and also recently A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood with Tom Hanks, which was kind of a biopic about Mr. Rogers, but there was a lot of creative directorial decisions in that were very inventive and made it feel a lot different to a normal run-of-the-mill biopic, but at the same time captured what made Mr. Rogers such a powerful individual and an icon to so many. And I think that perhaps with her creativity, but also her restraint, then maybe she might have been a better fit. But that is all we have time for today. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Hello, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, make sure to click that like button, and if you aren't already, click that subscribe button too.